This is Bricks and Clicks, where Cliff Hudson and Craig Miller explore the real conversations and innovative strategies with industry leaders behind transforming legacy brands for long-term sustainable growth in the digital age.
Well, Buddy, it's great to be here with you today, and Craig and I have been looking forward to a follow-up discussion with you in addition to the earlier discussions we've had about these enjoyable topics. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Look forward to the conversation.
Glad to be here.
So what I'd like to do is kind of do this a little bit kind of chronologically as it relates to the role of technology and Sonic. We could go back even further than this, but in terms of the new technologies we're applying to our brand, you know that upwards of 25 years ago, we did start experimenting with payment systems as consumers began shifting, and the new century began. I mean, Sonic got 95% of its business from cash paying customers, and yet credit card usage was growing quite a bit, and particularly with our children. They were starting to use credit cards more than we were in a way that always kind of surprised me. But that's pretty standard now. But at any rate, I'm curious what your recollection was, in that 01, 02 timeframe when we began talking about attaching credit card readers to the individual parking stall at a Sonic drive-in, so that the customer didn't have to turn loose of their credit card, give it to the car, let them take it inside. Any recollections or observations you have on that? Out of curiosity here.
Well, from the beginning, we were a little bit skeptical of change in that system and having to put the new menu out there and to make the change. But it didn't take long at all for us to realize the huge asset that was for the brand, because it just took off. Just skyrocketed. And that was always good for us in the sales and the ease of comfort for the customer. It was just super smooth.
Well, I remember that the things that I'd heard this from third parties, that when people could use credit cards, they actually spent more money. And I didn't necessarily expect that at Sonic, just because kind of made the assumption they chose what they want and then they paid for it. But in fact, one of the things I remember, and when you talk about how popular it was, I do remember that the average ticket back then was $5 for cash. The average credit card ticket was $7. So here we had this 40% jump with the use of credit cards. I'm assuming that was a good selling endpoint with operators.
Oh yes, it definitely was.
In a lot of ways, that 01, 02, 03 rollout of pays, in some ways, for me, kind of set the tone that our operators, that if we could show that the technology would that there was good payback on it, they would embrace it. But there were other challenges, of course, with our core technology at the store level, and the core technology being the point of sale system that was produced by Automatic. At least that was the case within Sonic and with most of the stores. I'm curious what your recollection was. If you go back to that same time as we rolled pays, the turn of the century there, real good growth in sales and profits closing out the century, nice momentum of the business with the rollout of pays, really positive impact on comps, good flow through. What's your recollection of the average franchisee relationship with Automatic at the time? Or maybe the more narrow point is, what was the perspective about them as a vendor, and was there a strong positive embrace or more disenchantment?
Well, Automatic had been around, started with Troy Smith and putting that whole thing together with us, having that different kind of system from the rest of the other QSR. Automatic, just grew up with us. So that was really all we knew as operators. And, at corporate, y'all worked out some other computer systems and was working with different things. But most franchisees stuck with Automatic along the way. And as the founder owner, started ailing and turning things over to his son is when we started having more and more complications from that angle. But also when we started doing more volume and more business, Automatic had its limitations that we had to, try to learn to accept. And then we was trying to learn how to get out of it and quit accepting it. And that's when we started saying, we got to make some changes here.
Was it coincidental with just the demands on the business, and that was the founder's son that was writing that time? Was that coincidental, or was there some cause as to the role of the founder's son, that there's some connection with the less happiness with the business?
Yeah, it was mostly his health that started floundering, and he had to kind of step back and started thinking a little bit different. Well,
I remember that period of time too, and I think everybody kind of assumed that Bill Cunningham would be out of it permanently, but as we all know, he did eventually come back for some period of time, and I suspect his reentry in the business actually, in some ways, I'm trying to recall here, but actually made our transition easier ultimately, just because he was kind of a little bit more reasonable guy, I think, than his son was.
No, you're exactly correct. You're right.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you about your earliest recollection of the need to consider POS, but I guess an alternative POS, but I guess you just told us that, and that is that as Bill stepped out and his son stepped in, our volume of business picked up and so on. There really started being more questions. What's your recollection about the nature of the questions? Was it just that the POS wasn't handling the volume of business, or was there something else about it? Was it ongoing service, or what was it?
Well, it was a lot of service issues, and they were kind of like slow to react to it. But I opened up a new store in Florida with the highest volume of any Sonic at the time in 2005, and the Automatic crashed. And it, they said it's just never done that much business before. And of course, that's unacceptable when you finally got the volume you've been chasing all your life, and then your POS, fails you real quickly, and you start thinking and shuffling on what to do.
Well, that's fascinating. I when you say that, I recall that happening. I recall the sales levels you hit and what a record that was, but I had really pretty much forgotten about the POS failing altogether. But my, that's a tough time to have to start writing tickets.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was the magic number was 1,000 customers a day or something like that. Like it's never done 1,000. So when it got to 1,000, it just kind of shut down and says, "Oh, we don't do this."
Somewhere in there, well, no, it would have been later still. I'm thinking about when we started pulling together folks to consult with us on that, but that would have been after Craig came on board. I think Craig joined us in 2009, and Craig was the one that formed the Technology Advisory Council or Committee. I don't recall having such a thing before that time outside of the FAC, Buddy. Do you recall our technology work? Well, anyway, I think the TAC was formed in 9 or 10.
Yes, that is correct. Before that, it wasn't. It was just working through the Franchise Advisory Council.
Right. So what do you kind of recall as some of the earlier stuff once TAC was formed, the Technology Advisory Committee was formed? Any earliest recollection of the alternative point of sale systems? Because you were an early tester of a lot of those, it seems to me.
Yeah, yes, I was. Real quickly, we found out that, Sonic franchisees sometimes were super loyal up front, but we was easily divided when you kind of got us in the back room and says, "Hey, I really need you to stay with Automatic." So we ran into some real challenges. Craig and I had quite a few discussions about some of those challenges, and because Automatic, we were saying as a Franchise Advisory Council that we've got to be united, we've got to make a change. And then Automatic started going behind us and started picking people off one at a time, saying, "Hey, you got to stick with us and we'll take better care of you." And that was a challenge that we had to step up and fight that we didn't really see coming.
And do you recall seeing instances of that they improved their service or improved something about the product that would have made somebody stay with them instead of not?
Yeah, they did. They came out with this new one. Greg, you might remember the name. I don't remember what they called it, but they came out with a new computer. It was new, better software, and it was new and improved, and it was good, but it was a little bit too little, too late.
Yeah, if I recall, Buddy, it was 1724. It was their version of an upgraded solution, attempting to handle more capacity and volume of the business, because Sonic had outgrown what was built in the previous version. But to your point, it was too little, too late, and it still didn't even come close to some of the alternatives of some of the top point of sale vendors, in the industry. So it was still quite a bit, I would say, technically behind where the better options were in the industry. The challenge, which you'll get to, I'm sure. You said it earlier. All franchisees knew Automatic, and there wasn't any other solution that really directly supported the unique service model of Sonic. And so, not that couldn't be overcome, but I think we had to kind of educate operators and franchisees how that could happen, and kind of open and educate was kind of our first step to having, I think, other operators at least consider what those options may be.
So for our listener, it'd probably be important to make the distinction that when we talk about them moving of the 1724 to a software-based system, that was a real change. It was something the industry had done years before, but our system had not done. We were still largely relying on a hardwired chip-based system. And if you wanted some upgrades, when upgrades needed to be done, the vendor had to send you a new chip to insert into the system. And so they really were the masters of our point of sale from that standpoint, because of that level of control. So even with them, the 1724 would have been a fundamental shift of giving up some of that quote power, theoretically, by having a software-based point of sale system, even though it was inadequate versus what I think others in the industry were already experiencing. But it was a path that I think we knew we had to go down eventually, meaning software-based, so it could be more easily managed at the store level, more easily upgraded, more easily offloaded, downloaded, whatever. But a flexibility that the old system just simply didn't permit at all. So a big shift in that, in terms of them realizing what they needed to do with us, but us realizing that we couldn't really link our future to them, I think. As we progress through the decade and kind of coming out of it, Buddy, I know years before, we as a matter of fact, it was early as 2004, Scott McClain made a presentation at the convention about trying to loop all this technology together, and that would give us communication systems with, at one time we thought, employees, operators, a franchisor, et cetera, exceeding what we were accustomed to. This would have been all before smartphones. And so we really didn't see the whole concept of everybody carrying around a hard disk drive in your hand, and with apps you could download, et cetera, et cetera. Somewhere after, when Craig came on board, 2009 or so, we did start talking to the operators about trying to tie all this together. And I don't remember how early that was that we were talking about it openly. I'd be curious if you have a recollection of when we started talking about the fact that we'd be able to engage customers off lot with ordering, with payment, and kind of move this to a different place. Any recollection when the earliest discussions with franchise leadership started going that direction?
No, I don't. I don't remember that.
Well, we started sharing it, I think first with the franchise leadership at FAC meetings, and then ultimately in 12 or 13, I think we really stepped it up in 2013 at our San Diego convention in terms of rolling out the concept for the broader group. I think it was 2014 when our marketing head, James O'Reilly, He wasn't a big guy anyway, but he stood up on stage with a smartphone that was bigger than he was, and said it was the new Apple XL or something like that. I can't remember what he called it, but it was all pretty cute. Craig, obviously, that would have been after you came on board, rolling out that broader. What do you recall the broader discussion with our franchise leadership about what we came to first call the Techno Oval and then later integrated customer engagement?
Yeah, we started to share that, what that may look like probably in 2011, at least conceptually. But we all knew the first element that we had to solve for was the point of sale, which was was the backbone of the restaurant operations. And then we started to conceptually show how these other pieces could come together, digitizing the stall experience, the mobile, the web. It was probably end of 11, where we started to pilot a proof of concept, what you referred to as kind of the ugly duckling, which we'll get to, I'm sure, at some point later in another episode. But Buddy, I don't know if you recall this, but you were the first franchisee, the first member of the TAC to certainly pilot the new point of sale options that we had, but also the new digital menu housing, which was the beginning of that connection that Cliff talks about. There were a number of challenges, very different. You were an amazing franchisee leader to help us kind of push through some of those challenges. But those early pilots were the end of 11, beginning of 12. You helped us work out a lot of those early challenges, iron out a lot of the kinks well before we announced it to the brand in 13. So you positioned us to be able to announce it that in 13. But that was late 11, early 12.
Thanks, Craig. Good to kind of get a placement of that. Buddy, Craig and I remember 13 because that was a San Diego convention where we did our first big rollout at a convention of how this whole thing was going to work, and sharing videos with our operators on what it would mean from a customer engagement standpoint. It still took us several years. We used kind of an off-the-shelf sort of app, and we're weaving more of this together. I think for a variety of reasons, we decided we weren't going to, in the long run, use that off-the-shelf app. So we switched, and started building our own, which unfortunately meant a significant delay in rolling out the whole program. By 2017 or so, we had really rolled out point of sale in most of the system, and we had POPs throughout the system. We had moved to a point we were testing the app on an individual store basis and kind of working out some kinks on that. And it was then in the first quarter of 2018 that we decided, it was time to pull the trigger. And it was the Ted Kurgan store, or Ted Kurgan Market in Louisiana. Buddy, does the name of that market come back? Started with an M.
Was it Alexandria?
Well, it may have been. I'm thinking of it. But yeah. Where is the state university located near? Is that Alexandria or is that another town?
Well, he's got one in Baton Rouge, and then he has Lafayette, and then it was in Alexandria. I know what you're talking about, though. I remember.
So we went to one market with him, and rolled it out in a single market where he had a handful of stores, and mechanically it just went great. That was March of 18. Do you have any recollection of what the process involved and what franchisees' anticipation of it was? And were people excited? Were people pessimistic? Any recollections of that early 2018 rollout?
So, Cliff, we went to, I think it might have been like Kansas, to a market, and the exec FAC went in like 3 different cars, and we all used the app, and we all placed our order, and they brought the wrong food to the wrong car, and we were all like, oh, this is really messed up, and Cliff wasn't happy that day about that.
I blocked that out,
Yeah. So we saw the kinks there, but it was just to show you that we really did move from, experimenting and touching it. And then Ted said, bring it to my market. I'll test it. We'll test it right there. I believe in it and we'll make it work. And most of us saw that it had legs and it could really increase our sales and bring another avenue of way to bring the order into the kitchen without it going through the speaker system and the POS. And today we're really seeing that. And it's just like, you'll be sitting there taking one order and 5 will show up on your board. And it's like, it's a completely different world now.
Yeah. What range of sales are you experiencing now at your stores as a percentage of sales that are mobile order, mobile pay?
I have 40 stores in Mississippi right now, and we average 22.4% weekly of order ahead. We have some stores that are 18%, and we have 2 stores that are almost 40.
Whoa.
So it varies very much between small towns, metro areas. But it really makes a difference.
And what when you say small towns versus metro, what characteristics do you see for the highest volume, the ones that are approaching 40%? What common characteristics there? Are they city versus small town, or what are they?
Yeah, more in the metro areas because people are moving faster. In the small towns, they just move slower, period, as far as the development of the people. And so the metro area has got to hire. But then we have some smaller ones that they just are just embracing it, and the kids just go nuts over it, and that's all the kids use. And then, what's really amazed me is a 84-year-old man standing there waiting on his order on his phone. And, it's very well adapted.
Yeah, fascinating. And do you have a recollection of the progression of the sales? Have they been generally kind of upward since we rolled it out in 18, 19, 20, 21? I'm assuming with a big spike in sales during COVID, meaning at the average Sonic Drive-In, that you, and just the nature of COVID, I'm assuming maybe what you saw was also a jump in the use of the app, just because people could order off premises, pay off premises, and it just put them in a much more secure situation from a health safety standpoint.
Sonic just was perfect for the pandemic because, you come in, you place your order through your phone, somebody hands you a bag and you can touch the bag in a different place. I mean, it was just like, no passing of germs through a restaurant, and it was just perfect for Sonic. And as you well know, we had some big sales increases over that period. And it helped Sonic learn how to do more volume very rapidly. And
do you recall the off use of the app by customers? Did that also spike disproportionately? I mean, did you see usage go? Is off the top of my head, but perhaps in 19 they were 8 or 10%, and 20 with COVID. Did they hit 15 and then grow to 20? And has it been a continual rise each year? Using the app, or was it more of a spike during COVID?
Oh, it was a spike during COVID. It was steadily climbing like 1% here and there. And then, like in 6 months, it jumped 5 or 6%. It just had a huge jump because, people were almost forced into trying it. And it was just good timing for the whole situation from Sonic's standpoint.
Right. So I have a couple of questions just about the shift through COVID. One, any general recollections you have that would be interesting to hear. But it would have been the time just immediately pre-COVID. We rolled out the app in 18, 19 benefited from it, 20, the COVID hit. And so, as you say, it was almost like Sonic was just perfectly made for that high anxiety circumstance. What recollection do you have from the franchisee standpoint, that transition as the business continued to kind of move upward, the ownership of your franchisor changing hands? Any observations? I mean, it's kind of like the elephant in the room if I don't raise it. But any observations on your part about that event at that time, and any perspective you want to offer?
we all were in a little bit of shock for a little while there, even though the world around us changes so much. We had you and your team for a long time, and Sonic had this great family relationship, and now we're being bought by a different group of people that will treat us in a different way, not negative or positive. So we were concerned about losing some of that, family reunion conventions, everybody knowing everybody. And from that standpoint, it was a little bit of anxiety. But then from the other standpoint, they had several other purchases, and their buying power was going to be super strong, so they could help us with our food cost. And so we just tried to turn it into feeling it from a positive standpoint, and they could make us more money with what we were doing and help us get to another level of profitability.
Well, hopefully that's post-COVID that's playing out. I know COVID kind of distorted everything, but it'll be good to hear over time as things kind of normalize that you are in fact on that path. So that's a good outlook, and I appreciate you sharing that. I recall having dinner with you. It may have been, kind of like that winter of 19 into 20. You were in Oklahoma City, I think, for an FAC meeting, and looked me up, and you, Joni, Leslie, and I had dinner. I was thinking that was the time frame, and you were just about to head to Napa on a trip. I'm curious about your recollection of that, your thought process, because it seems to me at that point you also told me you were looking. It seems like you said this at that time, looking to sell some of your assets. And yet, once you got to Napa, I think it was February, March of 2020, all hell broke loose with COVID. Any recollection of that time period? And am I remember that correctly? When you came to Oklahoma City and the four of us had dinner, and then you headed west for a break in Napa Valley?
Yeah, you're exactly correct. I had an FAC meeting, and we had dinner with you and your wife, and then we headed to Napa, and we stopped in Lake Tahoe, and then we left Lake Tahoe and was going into Napa, and we got to Napa and went to a winery and enjoyed a little bit that day. And that night on the 5 o'clock news, they were talking about shutting down the wineries. They were talking about shutting down California, and we'd driven the whole way because we were going to go up the entire West Coast up to Canada, and just see that whole West Coast and take a month off. And we had to turn around and go back to work and try to figure out how to maneuver through this new something that we'd never seen before.
So did you drive all the way back home?
Real quick.
Whoa.
Yeah, we did. And we had to stop at gas pumps and touch every pump that everybody else had touched. We had to go check into hotels where other people were, and people were saying, distance yourself from everybody else. And I had to get home before I could do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a challenging time where the things we came to know about that virus, we really didn't know initially. And this fear of touching something that somebody else had touched, was a real fear. And it was a scary time, very scary time.
The first part of the virus, we had some double-digit negative sales for several weeks there, and it was like, you don't know what you're up against. Where is this going to carry us? How far is it going to go? And then just in a short 6-week period, we went from double digits down to double digits up, and we said, "Oh, okay, we'll take this."
Right.
So it was a little bit scary for a period of time, and it changed for us, luckily.
This must have been a little bit of a, if I can use the term, kind of with the guy that was looking at buying your business, must have been a little bit of a love-hate thing. In other words, he must have initially said, whoa, do I want to do this? And then when your sales went up, you might have said, whoa, do I want to do this? There must have been a bit of a dance between the two of you.
It was. One time he says, hey, the whole world's changing. We've got to do a reevaluation. And I said, I would be glad to do that because my sales and profits are up. I think we need to reevaluate it too. And so we did reevaluate, and it went up about $10 million, and I was good.
Well, that's a good outcome. My recollection was then that you sold probably 60% of your stores in that one transaction. Was that an accurate recollection?
Yeah, my business started in Mississippi, and we grew into Alabama, and then we grew into Florida. And my biggest thing is I was tired of traveling and being gone all the time. So I wanted to sell the stores that created airplanes, rental cars, and hotel rooms. So we kept the 40 in Mississippi and sold the other markets where we could take better care of our stores and just ride off into the sunset.
Right. Well, that seems to have worked out pretty well for you from a lifestyle standpoint in terms of the less demand from a travel standpoint, but maybe just less demand overall. So I congratulate you on your kind of forward-thinking process there.
The dynamics that you talked about from double digit to down to double digit up, Buddy. And as we've talked about the years of investing and building this kind of connected business model for Sonic, order ahead, the kind of digital experience. At a time when almost every business was continuing to go down for quite a while, how did the technology? I say every business, brick and mortar business, that is. What role did the technology play in all the the years that we had kind of built up to this 17, 18 into 19 and now? What role do you think the technology played in that drastic turn of sales in the business at that time?
It's kind of funny that you asked that question, because we started out this discussion talking about automatic and it holding us back when we were trying to grow and we were trying to go to another level of sales at Sonic. So, fast forward 10 years or so, our entire POS, POPs and all was set up, ready for us to go to the next level. So, Sonic started jumping into some, $2, $3, $4 million locations and was handling the volume gracefully.
The end right there. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. You just made me rethink that. And that is true that we were set up for success. And, until we run into the people issues that took a little while for us to kind of understand it, we were flying high and handling the volume very well.
I know back in those early days, automatic, and a lot of brands go through this. You outgrow, a brand that is, with the history and track record of growth like Sonic, you tend to outgrow vendors and partners. It's one of the reasons that I was excited to come to really work for the brand with the vision. So it's great to hear you say that in terms of that 10 years of going from behind to ahead. Hence, one of our chapters is Fortune favors the prepared, and so we're prepared for the volume. We certainly couldn't have predicted COVID, but we were prepared for the volume and the ability to different occasions and different ways of engaging with with the customer, which it's wonderful to hear you say that. Wonderful to really be a part of that story.
So, Buddy, it's been good talking to you about this, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. It'd be interesting over the in the near term to kind of hear where things go with you for Sonic. It sounds like you continue to grow your sales at your store levels, the 40 you have remaining, growing those very positively and performing very strongly. So I congratulate you on how you've approached your business in the last several years and wish you continued good luck. It's very helpful to hear your story today or be reminded of the story, and we'll look forward to visiting further soon.
I enjoyed it, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. Talk soon.
This has been Bricks and Clicks from Forbes Books. If you want to learn more about how traditional businesses can evolve, innovate, and lead with the 21st century customer and ever-changing market conditions, go to bricksandclicks.com and click on how to create your digital roadmap.